Okay, turn to John chapter 19. You know, while everybody's turning there, you ever think about this? Jesus is considered light, referred to as the light of the world. Satan is referred to as the prince of darkness. Do you ever think about this? Light can always overcome darkness, can't it? Always. Can darkness ever overcome light? Can Satan ever overcome Christ? But Christ overcomes Satan. Just think about that. A little freebie. Sometimes I get to thinking about things. As long as you have a little light, darkness can't overcome it, no matter how dark it is. I was thinking about that coming here. Our headlight, out where we live, there are no lights, a zero. So we can see in front of us because of our headlights. But you look out your rearview mirror, and there is nothing, unless there's a full moon. But tonight there was clouds. So anyway, we're in chapter, I said 19, but we're in chapter 18. This is, this is his betrayal and arrest of Jesus. That's what we're going to look at. But I want to look at some points that John points out that sometimes we may not think about. And starting in verse 1, it says, when Jesus spoke in these words, he went out with the disciples to Kidron Valley, where there was a garden in which he and his disciples entered. So Kidron Valley is east of Jerusalem, between the city and the Mount of Olives. So that gives you kind of an idea where this is at. And it's a real lush green area that Jesus would go to. And he would often go there when he's talking with disciples and praying. It says, now Judas Iscariot, that's who betrayed him, also knew the place. For Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas, having procured a band of soldiers, some officers, chief priests, and Pharisees, went there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. And Andrew touched bases on this on Sunday at the Lord's table. We don't know exactly how many men were in this band or troop, but it's estimated to be, on historical data, anywhere between 100 and 600 men. So in either case, 100 men against 12, the 11 apostles and Jesus. Either case, it's important to note how outnumbered they were to come and arrest one man. Or maybe they were planning on arresting Jesus and the apostles. You ever think about that? Because that's addressed. They may have been wanting to arrest everybody. But it's kind of interesting what happens here. It says in verse 4, then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, came forward and said, whom do you seek? They answered him, Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus said to them, I am he. And Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. Now, let's picture what's going on. A minimum of 100 men, fully armed, when said they're looking for Jesus, when he said, I'm he, why did they fall back? Why were they afraid? Because Peter was there with a sword? No. Even if all 11 of them had sword, but we think only 2 of them had a sword at this time. But they fell back at him speaking. Why? Okay. Maybe a lot of these guys were a little doubtful about what's going on. They're following orders, but they're not comfortable with it, are they? You see the lack of confidence that they have in what they're about to do. And you're going to see that even more in a minute. Because of everything he's done, and they're questioning in their mind. This guy's done all this stuff. What if he really is? What's going to happen here? So, I thought they heard what you said. That's why. So it says, when they fell on the ground, verse 7. So when he asked them again, whom do you seek? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus answered, I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these men go. Now let's take that point. Let's notice that point. Right away, Jesus, remember it just said he knows all that's going to happen? So, assuming they were probably going to arrest everybody. But Jesus said, let these men go. Remember, it's important to Jesus. Last week we read in his prayer that he has kept them safe. One more time here, he's protecting them. Now, you see the soldiers, when he said, I'm the one you're looking for, basically, they fell back. They have that doubt, that question, a fear came across them. So now Jesus said, I'm the one you're looking for. Don't touch my apostles. Don't touch the ones who God gave me. So that gets magnified here in a moment. It says, blah, blah, blah. Let these men go. This was fulfilled to the word that he had spoken. Of those whom you gave me, I have lost not one. But then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the ear of the high priest servant and cut off his right ear. So let's pause right there because I want to bring up something. Let's think about Peter. Peter gets a bad rap all the time. This could be all kinds of things. You think about this for a minute. Was Peter just impulsive? Was he a little ignorant? Or was he so caught up in Christ that he felt he had to do whatever, even if it meant his life? How much did it take for him, for the few men, and maybe only 2 or 3 swords among them, for him to take his sword and try to kill a soldier? Was that going to end well on a normal situation? Not at all. But notice that how much Jesus is in control. Because they didn't attack him. Jesus said, put your sword away. It's not the place. He says, my Father's will needs to be done. That's what he's going to tell him. And then he put his ear back on. But you would have thought that they would have rushed. Wouldn't you? A strikeout, but they didn't do that because you see how much Jesus was in control here. It's kind of awesome when you really look at this. And yeah.
I've heard it said that trying to get somebody's ear off would be hard. But if you drew the sword out and you whipped and go for his neck,
yeah.
and he did,
right.
Put his head down, then you would just get that ear
Yep.
off. So
And I'm sure that's what he was trying to do. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure that's what that's what he was trying to do, going to kill this guy, but the guy ducked and caught his ear. And that's probably what happened. He says in verse 11, so Jesus said to Peter, put your sword into his sheath. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given me? So Jesus is saying, this isn't the time. I need to be about the will of my Father. This is what's been planned. So, thanks but no thanks, Peter. So now, remember at this point, this is something we're going to pick up on in a few minutes, but I want to make this point now. Put yourself in Peter's shoes. He's trying to do the right thing by protecting Jesus, isn't he? He is. But then Jesus tells him, No, put it away. I've got to accept what's going to happen. Does Peter understand what he meant? Probably not, because they haven't understand anything. So far, when Jesus kept telling him, my hour has not yet come, and a little while I'm going to be with you, and a little while I'll be away. They didn't understand any of that. So you got to see the perplexity. What's going on in Peter's head? What do you mean? We can't let him take you. We've got to fight, no matter what it takes. So, but his answer is not real clear. Shall I not drink the cup that my Father has given me? You got to see, Peter's going, well, what do you mean? What am I, what are we thinking here? What do we got to do? And then so you see that going on in Peter's mind. And I want you to remember that as we go down through this. So the band of soldiers and their captain and officers and Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. First, they led him to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had advised the Jews that it would be expedient that one man should die for the people. So you see this thing going on. They're arresting Jesus because Caiaphas is saying, look, just get him. We don't need to worry about everybody else. Get him. He can die instead. So it says, Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Do we know who that disciple was? No, we don't know. Speculation was it was John. Because you remember at the cross he was already there with Mary, but that's a speculation. The Bible does not anywhere tell us who that was. But we know it was somebody well known. Why couldn't it have been Matthew? You ever think about that? I'm not saying it was. I'm just saying this is someone who already knew the high priest. That would have been Matthew, right? But the speculation for most people is it was John, but that's only speculation. Now, we don't want to get hung up on that because does it matter? Does it matter who that was? No, we just know somebody else came. So then let's see what else happened. Verse 16, but Peter stood outside at the door. So the other disciple, who was known by the high priest, went out and spoke to the servant girl who kept watch at the door and brought Peter in. The servant girl at the door said to Peter, you also are not one of this man's disciples, are you? He said, I am not. His first denial. Now the servants and officers had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing warming themselves. And Peter also was with them standing and warming himself. Did anybody see a problem with this? What is Peter doing? He's mingling. He's over by the warm fire with a group of Jews that was about to crucify Christ. What does the scriptures warn us about associating with the wrong people? Exactly. So here's Peter put himself in a position. Instead of standing off aside, he's over there joining them by their fire. Probably laughing at whatever they're saying or whatever they're doing, who knows. But he's in the midst of them now. Put himself there. It says, he put himself by the fire. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and teaching. And Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple where all Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. So Jesus is saying, look, I've been transparent. I've been in your synagogues. I have been teaching openly. I've not done anything behind your back. It's all open. You don't have to ask me this. You already know where I stand. You already know where I'm at. And that's what he says. And you're going to see in a minute how this questioning turns. And Jesus says in verse 21, why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard what I have said to them. They know what I've said. Jesus is kind of saying, you know what? You're asking me these questions, but guess what? You already know the answer. You already know. What do you want me to say? I've not done anything in secret. You already know. And remember, going back to what it says, in Jesus knowing all things. So you see him saying this to him, and then you're going to see how it plays out a little more. It says, when he had said these things, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus, hit him with his hand, saying, is this how you answer the high priest? And Jesus answered, if what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why do you strike me? Jesus sitting there going, why are you hitting me? Why did you hit me? Tell me, did I say something wrong? But of course, he couldn't answer that, could he? And that was only the beginning of what took place. Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. And then now Simon, verse 25, was standing and warming himself. So they said to him, you also are not one of the disciples, are you? And he denied it, said, I am not. And one of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter cut off, asked, did I not see you at the garden with him? And for the third time, Peter again, I added that in, Peter again denied it. And at once the rooster crowed. So, the other three accounts of the Gospels elaborate on that a lot more. But for the sake of this one, if you want to read the full account, but I think one of the most frightening and touching things in the Scriptures is when Peter looked up and Jesus met eyes with him. It doesn't say that here, but in the other accounts, what happened to Peter? It says he wept bitterly. It tore him up. So now, I want us to look at this. Here's Peter. He tries to defend Jesus and gets told, put away your sword. Now he gets himself in a situation. He's still not understanding all what's going on. He's only allowed in because the other disciple who knew the chief priest let him in. He's a little confused. He goes over to the fire, mixing with the wrong people. You can see how messed up he probably is in his head. He doesn't know what's going on. Remember, where did the other apostles go? They went home. They went to their homes. So you see, Peter trying to do the right thing got caught up in the moment, got caught up in the confusion where he's going, I'm doubting everything. So if I tell them I'm with them, they're going to kill me. So he denies them. But then that wasn't really where his heart was. That was a reactionary thing. And you know that when you read Matthew and Luke where it says he went out and wept bitterly. It tore him up. It tore him up. And then verse 28. And they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So Pilate went outside to them, they, meaning the Jews, went outside to them and said, What accusations do you bring against this man? And they ask him, if this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you. So, wait a minute. Is that an answer? Why is that not an answer? Yeah. He didn't do anything wrong. They couldn't name what he did wrong. He just wasn't. He was bringing change, and they didn't want it. They didn't want who he was being represented as. So when Pilate asked him, they said, we wouldn't have brought him to you if it wasn't evil. Don't worry about it. Trust us. No answer. How sad is that? And then look what else happens here. Pilate, verse 31, said to them, take him yourself and judge him then by your own laws. So Pilate's saying, look, I have nothing against this guy. You say he's evil. You won't tell me what he did. So now you take him and you judge him. Did they want to do that? Look at the excuse the Jews said. The Jews said to him, it is not lawful for us to put anyone to death. Excuse me? And then before we go on, look over in verse 40. And they cried out again, not this man, but Barnabas. Release Barnabas. So they had an option. Now let me ask you. They said it's not lawful for us to put someone to death. Are they not putting Christ to death? They're not physically doing it, but they're doing it. But they're doing it. Barabbas, I'm sorry. Yeah, it says Barabbas. My brain doesn't work that good sometimes. So Pilate, verse 33, entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said, now I want you to pay attention with what Pilate's doing now. You can see frustration in Pilate right now. He's kind of not happy with the whole situation. So Pilate entered the headquarters again and said to Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus answered, do you say this of your own accord? Or did others say it to you about me? Pretty interesting the way he answered it. And Pilate answered, am I a Jew? And that's a sarcastic. Am I a Jew? What do I know about who you are? He says, your own nation, the chief priests, have delivered you over to me. What have you done? Now he's asking Jesus, what have you done? And Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from this world. So he's saying, you have nothing to be threatened about. I'm not here to take over your job. I'm not here to take over. My kingdom is not of this world. And that's exactly why it's bothering the Jews. The Jews were wanting a knight in shining armor, so to speak. They wanted a king to lead against the Romans and to take over. But that's not what Jesus came to do. And that's what he's saying here. It's not of this world. My kingdom is not. And it's interesting to note what he says. Hey, if it was, we'd take you out. Yeah.
But the Jews were right because they had lost authority. They could not stone and cut people to death.
Right.
The Romans, they took over that whole world at that time.
Exactly.
And so people under control, they lost that right. And Pilate's under pressure too because if he's not doing a good job, he'll get snatched out of that position.
Right. Well, and you see here, isn't this interesting how we were even reading this a couple of weeks ago in Jeff's class from 1 Colossians, that David was doing the wrong thing because he was giving in to the desire of the people. Pilate's doing the wrong thing because he was giving in to the desire of the people. The mob are doing the wrong thing because they were giving in to the high priest. People get caught up. You see that right now going on in Minnesota. Half the people don't even know why they're out there for the most part. It's just something to do. People react, not knowing what they're reacting to. And you see that, all because of pressure from the world. And that's what you see here with Pilate. Like you said, he's got to do something because uprising of the Jews, and that's not going to look good on him. So he'll answer to that.
The Jews, they still did stone others, though, like they stoned Stephen afterwards. So you think maybe they wanted the Romans to do it so he would be tortured?
Well, they just want an excuse. They didn't want... You got to remember, the same reason... Think about this a minute. The same reason the soldiers fell back to the ground. Yes. The Jews, in their mind, are going, They're not exactly convinced. But, so let's put it off on somebody else. And Pilate is not convinced. Because remember what he says? I'm washing my hands of this. But do it anyway. Nobody,
I can say Paul had a letter of authority from the Roman authorities.
Yeah.
The Jews couldn't just go off and do that.
Right. Exactly. So, if you look here, nobody wants to take responsibility for this. Nobody wants to take responsibility. The Jews want it done, but they don't want to take responsibility. Pilate doesn't know why he's doing it, but if the Jews won't do it, he's going to have to at this point, because it's gone too far. It's gone too far. Plus, what did Jesus say back in verse 11? When he told Peter to put his sword away, shall I not drink the cup of the Father has given me? Who's in control? God. It says, then Pilate, no, sorry, I'm in the wrong spot. Let me get back over here. Verse 37, then Pilate said to him, so you are a king. Now, you get that, that's a sarcastic note, isn't it? So you are a king. That's what you said. You are a king of a kingdom. So he's being a little sarcastic here. And Jesus answered, you say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come to the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of truth listens to my voice. And again, Pilate gets sarcastic. Pilate said to him, what is truth? You don't know. What is truth? What is truth? God, Jesus himself is truth. He is truth. And he says, I've come to bear truth. Bear who? Himself. And Pilate says, what is truth? What do you mean? You don't know what truth is. So you see the kind of the sarcastic view he's taking. Jesus is not telling him what he wants to hear. What do you believe Pilate would prefer happens here? Wouldn't he think at this point, remember he just flogged him. Wouldn't he think at this point, okay, I'm sorry, forget it, let me just go. Wouldn't that be the impulse of the rest of us? Look, it ain't worth it, I'll find another way to do this. But it's not wavering Jesus. He hasn't wavered. Matter of fact, he's talking back to him. You said that I'm a king. That's what you said. And he says, but I've come here to bear truth, bear himself. And then Pilate says, of course, what is truth? Did Pilate want to answer that? No. He's just now being sarcastic to him. After he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, I find no guilt in him. But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at Passover. So do you want me to release you, the king? Now, I want you to notice this. Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? Have you ever noticed that statement, what he's saying there? He is being sarcastic again. And he's looking at these Jews who are already mad at Jesus because he's not the king they want, and he comes out and he just fuels the flame, fans the flame, doesn't he? You want me to release you the king of the Jews? That's only going to fire them up. He says, I found no guilt in him, but I'll release to you the king of the Jews. You see all this going on. Pilate's fanning the flame a little bit. And they cried out again. It says, not this man. That's another thing. Not this man, not the Son of God. This man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. Now we know Barabbas was a really bad person. But they didn't care at this point. They didn't care. They only seen an end to Christ. They didn't want to believe in him. They didn't want to listen to him. They didn't want to know the truth. They were in such a mob form that it didn't matter. They didn't matter. And then when Pilate fanned those flames by saying, you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? That just made them matter. It just made them matter. If we go over to Luke, real quick, 22. And I want to bring this point out again. Actually, we'll start, let's see. Well, we'll start up in verse 22, 60. 59. It says, after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, certainly this man was with him, talking about Peter, for he too is a Galilean. But Peter said, man, I do not know what you are talking about. And immediately while he's still speaking, the rooster crowed. And 61 is a key verse. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he had said to him, before the rooster crowed day, you would deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. I want us to think about that for a minute. When we deny Christ, when we turn away from him, when we sin against him, is that any different than what Peter did? If we keep in our mind that when we create a sin, if we think about the fact that Jesus is looking at us at that moment, maybe that would help us in those tough times. Because we need to be convicted of him and trying to do the right thing. And you see Peter got caught up in all this. But then when he realized, when he came to his senses, when he seen the loving Savior look at him, it tore him up. And we should feel bad like that every time we sin. Every time we walk away from him in our way of doing things. Yeah, Roger. He does. He did. He messed up. Real guilty. And see, that's a problem because too many times people, I started off by talking about light and darkness. Too many times people want to think that they've gone so far away from Christ that they can't come back. You can't go dark enough where the light of the world can't bring you back. Does that make sense? See, we can mess up, but Jesus has open arms when we're ready to come back. We can't get so much into darkness that he can't take us back. But that requires stuff on our part. And you see Peter afterwards, when on the day of Pentecost, after the ascension, Peter was right there preaching. He was convicted. He didn't shrug away. He didn't run and commit suicide like Judas did. He turned from his evil ways to do the right thing, from his mistakes. And I want us to understand that Peter put himself in a position that helped him deny Christ. We are to stay out of situations that will cause us to sin. May it be affiliating with the wrong people, hanging out with the wrong crowd, doing things, or being somewhere that's going to tempt us. Stay away from places that will tempt you. You know, if you're on a diet, don't go to the pizza joint. But then don't eat the crust. No. Yeah.
That's a situation like you ever lay down at night, man, why did I do this? How many sleepless nights across Peter?
Oh.
All.
Yeah.
And those guys, that's got to be a heavy load there.
Well, and then we know Paul mentioned it how many times? Paul mentioned, I'm not worthy. He felt so bad over it that it came up in almost every letter, at least once. That's how bad he felt about it. And you see Peter's was so zealous, even when they arrested him and threatened him, it didn't even slow him down, did it? Didn't even slow him down. Matter of fact, they said after let him go, they beat him, let him go. He and John went over to the courthouse and preached. To the courtyard and preached. Not the courthouse. The courtyard. See, we need to have that type of attitude. We need to have that conviction, that boldness that the early apostles had. Especially that Peter showed, because he was pretty bold.